This is a Fox News alert. North Korea has fired off another missile. It headed toward Japan. The Japanese government is saying it went over Japan into the Pacific.
Japanese government says a ballistic missile launched from North Korea has flown over northern Japan and fallen into the Pacific Ocean, 2,000 kilometers off the Cape of Erimo in Hokkaido at around 7:16 a.m. local time. The government's top spokesperson says no debris has fallen in Japanese territory, adding that no aircraft or ship has.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is urging China to cut off its oil supply to North Korea to pressure the regime even further into abandoning its nuclear development. Speaking at a press conference in London alongside his British counterpart Boris Johnson, Tillerson said Beijing has considerable leverage as Pyongyang's most important oil supplier. Washington's top diplomat admitted that gaining China's consent will be difficult, but said that he's hopeful the great country and world power will do what is necessary. The U.S. had sought a full oil embargo at the UN Security Council earlier this week, but was forced to drop its demands due to opposition from Beijing and Moscow.
We are continuing our coverage on North Korea's latest missile launch. The Japanese government says a ballistic missile launched from North Korea has flown over northern Japan and fallen into the Pacific Ocean 2,000 kilometers east of Hokkaido at around 7:16 a.m. local time. Japanese officials say the missile was fired at around 6:57 a.m. from Sunan near Pyongyang. The missile likely reached an altitude of 750 kilometers and flew 3,700 kilometers. Japan's foreign ministry says, judging from its range, it is likely an intercontinental ballistic missile. I repeat, Japan's foreign minister says, judging from its range, it is likely an intercontinental ballistic missile. Meanwhile, the U.S. military says it is an intermediate-range ballistic missile. We're going live now to the Prime Minister's office.
North Korea fired one ballistic missile to the Tohoku region, to the direction of Tohoku region. And this missile flew over Japan's Hokkaido and passed over Hokkaido, and at 7:16 a.m. it fell in the east of Erimo Cape. I said 2,000 kilometers before, but at this moment we think that it's 2,200 kilometers east of Erimo Cape. And there has been no projectiles fallen on the land of Japan, and there has been no report from the airplanes or vessels of any damage. And there has been no destruction or interception by self-defense forces of Japan. Japanese government has been continuing to do a survey on any fallen substances, and we have been continuing this investigation. Following the August 29th launch, North Korea fired a missile again, and this will escalate the tension in the region. There was no prior notification, and the missile fell near the waters of Japan, and this endangers the vessels and the aircraft, so it's quite serious. At around 8 a.m., National Security Council was convened, and we discussed the measures to be taken by Japan. The Prime Minister of Japan issued 6 items to be followed, and we checked and reconfirmed these 6 steps, and we will work to increase our security, and we will call for further restraint by North Korea, and we have confirmed that we will take a very strong and tough measures against North Korea. With regard to this launching of the missile, we launched a strong protest against North Korea through our embassy in Beijing, and we conveyed the Japanese people's strong indignation and condemned North Korea in the strongest term. And we will work closely with the United States and South Korea in response to North Korea. The Chief Cabinet Secretary's statement has been confirmed, as you can see in your hand. In any case, we will do utmost in analyzing the information, and we will work to ensure the safety of Japanese citizens. We will work closely with the United States and South Korea, and we will stay on alert, and we will do our best to secure the safety of the Japanese people. So we want the Japanese public to stay calm.
My name is Takahashi from NHK. Regarding the type of missile, the flight distance and trajectory, are such analyses in progress? The flight distance is 3,700 kilometers, and the maximum altitude is approximately 800 kilometers. These are the estimates we have obtained so far. And it does not appear to be a lofted launch missile. And regarding the type of ballistic missile, that is still being analyzed. My name is Takashi from NHK. That means, judging from the flight distance, do you regard it is very likely that it is an ICBM? Not necessarily so, and all that is being analyzed right now. I'm Takahashi from NHK again, and with the latest missile launch, what are the chances that the U.S. will take military action? The government of Japan is calling to step up pressure against North Korea.
Haneda Airport, where Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has just arrived from India. This is Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at Haneda Airport. He has just arrived back from India. He met in India with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of course, North Korea's missile issue was on the agenda. We are expecting Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to speak to reporters on the latest missile launch. We are waiting for the Prime Minister to speak to reporters. This is a live footage of Haneda Airport, where Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has just arrived back from India. We are expecting him to speak to reporters soon. And when that happens, we will take you live to that press conference. This is a live picture of Haneda Airport. Now, White House officials say the U.S. president has also been briefed on the situation, but did not comment further. Japanese Defense Ministry officials say given the trajectory of the missile, it is likely it could be a Hwasong 12. That's the same type that was launched on August 29th. Now, people in Japan voice their concern.
ちょうどホテルで起きて準備している途中だったんで、念のためということでシャワールームに入りまして困ったもんですね。
何事もなくてよかったんですが、いつかもしかしたらと思うとちょっと怖い。
We also asked people in Shibuya, downtown Tokyo.
It can be a very scary time. You don't know what's going to happen, what they're going to do, how the rest of the world will respond.
It's a little bit scary. I don't like the fact that that's happening, and I know politics right now are very heated, so it's a little bit tense, but we're going to still try and enjoy our time.
I think the majority of the people are looking for peace, not those type of war actions. We hope the situation comes down.
Now, investors around the world are also closely watching how Tokyo markets are reacting to another missile launch by North Korea. Let's go to our business reporter, Phoebe Amoroso, who is standing by at our NHK Market studio. Phoebe.
Good morning, Mickey. Yes, geopolitical concerns have returned to the markets, and many traders are buying safer assets like the yen and gold. But first, let's see how the markets kicked off the trading day this Friday, September the 15th. The Nikkei opened little changed, now just a fraction in the positive, as investors are holding back from active trading. The Topix is also a fraction in the positive. Taking a look at currency levels, The dollar plummeted on news of the missile launch, but it has recovered a little. The pair is currently at 110.01 to 04. We're likely to see continued demand for the yen, as it's seen as a safer asset during times of crisis. The dollar had been gaining as US data showed inflation for August picked up, raising bets for a rate hike by the Federal Reserve in December. And after North Korea's action, investors are eyeing other safer assets like gold. Futures of the precious metal in New York are rising since the missile launch. But some analysts say investors' risk-off stance could be moderate, as North Korea's threats have grown more frequent. And many investors are confident after the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at another record high. So we'll see how these factors weigh in throughout the day. Looking at other markets in Asia, Seoul's Kospi's in the negative, as are Australian shares in the negative. China's markets open in an hour and a half. We'll be keeping track of all the market developments, but for now, Mickey, it's back to you.
Thank you, Phoebe. That was Phoebe Amoroso reporting live from our NHK Market Studio.
So let's get straight into the details on North Korea's missile launch. This latest ballistic missile flew over Japan and landed out in the Pacific Ocean and appears to be Pyongyang's response to the UN Security Council sanctions approved earlier this week, that for its sixth nuclear test. Let's hear more from our Defence Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin, who joins us on the line. So Hyun-bin, a worrying development that only adds to the high tensions in the region.
That's correct, Mark. North Korea launched what we know now was an intermediate ballistic missile early Friday morning from an area near Pyongyang. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the IRBM was fired at 6:57 a.m. South Korean time from Sunan, near the North Korean capital. It flew over northern Japan and came down in the North Pacific. Now, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the missile reached an altitude of 770 kilometers and flew around 3,700 kilometers. And Seoul and Washington are currently analyzing the launch to confirm what type of missile it was, but experts say it was most likely a Hwasong-12. Now, late last month, North Korea fired a Hwasong-12 over Japan, which traveled 2,700 kilometers and reached a maximum altitude of about 550 kilometers. Now, Friday's launch followed a similar path, but flew 1,000 kilometers further than the previous launch. And in response, South Korean military conducted its own ballistic missile training exercise just 7 minutes after North Korea's missile launch. The military fired two Hyunmoo-2 missiles, which have a range of 250 kilometers.
With the consent of the president, the military launched two Hyunmoo-2 ballistic missiles into the East Sea. It's the same distance between the training area and the Sunan airfield where the missile was fired.
Well, one of them landed directly on target, but the other crashed into the East Sea shortly after launch. The South Korean military is looking into the failed launch. Now, North Korea's latest launch also comes 4 days after the UN Security Council slapped stronger sanctions on the regime for its sixth nuclear test conducted earlier this month. Now, keep an eye on any updates and bring them to you during the next newscast at 2. Back to you.
OK, Hyun-bin, we look.
Details first on our breaking news from North Korea, where there are reports the rogue nation has just launched yet another missile. Live now to US Bureau Chief Robert Penfold for more. Rob, the incident sent panic through Japan, understandably.
Yeah, Mark, from what we're hearing, this certainly didn't catch the US or the Japanese by surprise. You know, for the last 24 hours, spy satellites have actually been watching a great deal of activity around the North Korean launch site there. Now, like the last test firing of an intercontinental ballistic missile, this one too was fired over the top of Japan, frightening everyone there. Certainly a provocative action considering all the warnings that have already been given to the North Koreans. And of course, earlier this week in the United Nations, they imposed even stricter sanctions on them. Now, in the last half hour, Prime Minister Turnbull has spoken about this. Let's have a listen.
Yeah, well, this is another dangerous, reckless, criminal act by the North Korean regime, Kieran, threatening the stability of the region and the world, and we condemn it utterly. This is a sign, I believe, of their frustration at the increased sanctions on North Korea recently imposed by the Security Council. It's a sign that the sanctions are working.
Now, with the latest launch, we can now expect, of course, more angry statements, as you've just heard there, and also from Donald Trump down as well. But in reality, America's policy is that really trying to negotiate with the rogue leadership rather than start any sort of military action. It's the only safe way really to resolve the situation. Of course, that's because South Korea, right next door, well, we can only imagine a war in that region will result in an horrific death toll. It'd be just too horrible to imagine. Mark?
We begin with that breaking news. Japanese television running urgent warnings at this hour, reporting another missile launch from North Korea. Japanese television reporting the missile has passed over Japanese airspace. Several population centers have now been warned. This launch is yet another provocative move on the part of North Korea. ABC's David Curley is following late developments. He's live in Washington tonight. David, good evening.
Good evening, David. Very provocative. According to NHK, the Japanese broadcaster, this missile flew over the northern part of the country at 7:06 a.m. No word on what type of missile it was. The North Koreans did fire 2 ICBM missiles back in July, and a flurry of activity in just the past couple of weeks. On August 29th, a ballistic missile flying over Japan, the first one. September 3rd, that H-bomb test, the UN Security Council passing sanctions just 9 days later. And now today, the second missile to fly over Japan, according to NHK, but we do not know what kind of missile. No word from the Pentagon on this action by the North Koreans.
The Bank of Korea held an emergency meeting this morning to assess the impact on the country's financial markets of North Korea's latest missile launch. During the meeting, the attendees, including 6 ministries related to the economy, agreed that North Korea's continued provocations pose a risk as they have increased in frequency and threat level. To minimize such risks, the participants said they will strengthen their monitoring and review contingency plans if necessary. The threat has already been reflected in the benchmark Kospi, which started trading this morning at just above 2,370, down nearly 0.3% from the previous day.